Hey everyone, welcome back to the Quo Vadis podcast, the Catholic podcast that helps you to begin with the end in mind. I am your esteemed host, Taylor Geiger, and joining me now, you want to say something, Father Mark. I said esteemed host and you already got defensive, so...
Defensive is not the word. I just, in my mind, what's the definition? After how many episodes do you become esteemed? I guess is this number 7? Is that the magic number? It's a very holy number, but I mean, is that the number 7?
That's it.
Then you become esteemed.
Yep. It actually comes from people recognizing that I'm on the podcast. So this actually happened. I swear this is true. I was in a meeting yesterday. And in the meeting, we had a couple of youth ministers. And one of the youth ministers, I joined her group over Zoom like a couple months ago to talk to their group. And she was playing our podcast for her students as they were coming in and as getting ready for the night. And she was like, anyone recognize like one of the voices in there? And they're like, yeah. It's like that's Taylor. He joined our group. And I'm like, yeah! I made it.
It's that guy.
Hey, look, I made it. It's just like, that's it. That's all it takes. And then there's you, who was on vacation for a week, and I had to do one by myself. So anyway, how are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
That's good. Happy ordinary time, by the way.
Thank you.
I feel weird being in ordinary time. Do you feel weird being in ordinary time?
No.
Why?
Because, I mean, what I like about it is... the reason we have, well, it's not the reason, but, we have this ordinary time. I mean, that's what makes these other, seasons a little bit different and special is that you have to have this time just, to grow in the relationship, to hear. I love now that we're getting back into like the story. So a daily mass, right? So we started with Mark's gospel. So we're getting it from the very beginning. So every daily mass, you get the story from the beginning, calls the disciples, calls the apostles. Now he's healing. People are trying to figure out who is this guy? He speaks with authority. So I like that because then when Lent comes, it's like, okay, it's that shift. So you need that somebody. I mean, maybe this is akin to somebody who's all disappointed, and I get it. I was covering in a parish on Sunday after the last mass. They took all the Christmas lights down. And it's like, oh, it's so sad, and I wish they could just stay up. But it's like, yeah, I know there's a lot of work and it's beautiful, but I mean, if it's up there all the time, it's not special.
Anymore. Yeah.
So that's why what I like about ordinary time is it brings us back down so that when we have that next season, next one on the docket is Lent. It is that kind of specialness. It's not a word, but it comes back.
It is a word now. Yeah. Well, and I was actually, I didn't know this, and I feel like I should have known this. It was a couple years ago during one of the masses in Manitowoc where I live, and the priest was preaching about ordinary time. And
shout out to St. Francis of Assisi.
Shout out, indeed. And it was Father Bill Evans who was preaching, so shout out to Father Bill. And he was talking about how ordinary time, he's like, ordinary time is not supposed to be ordinary, in the sense, the more colloquial version of ordinary. He's like, it means that it's ordered. Like we are trying to order ourselves, for the next... the next thing. So it's not like this isn't a time to just be like, hey, we're good, hey, we're just kind of going through it and hanging out now, whatever. But now he's like, no, now we're ordering our lives to encounter God, and then the next season comes, you're like, well, I'm ready for this. And I'm like, wow, I for some reason never knew that. I mean, I don't know if it was my youth ministers who didn't teach me that. I don't know if Joel Stepanek listens to this, but hey, Joel, or if it's John Blevins or who.
He's calling in right now. He's calling.
Oh my goodness.
We don't have that capability yet.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
I don't know if that'd be good or not. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think you can take calls on a recorded thing. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Isn't it more like a live?
Recorded? This isn't live?
Oh my gosh, get out of here. You know it's not live. You're so absurd. Anyway.
I'll do it live.
So we have a guest joining us today in the studio.
An esteemed guest.
A more esteemed guest than myself, if I can say so myself, is Julianne Stanz. Julianne is the Director of Parish Life and Evangelization at the Diocese of Green Bay. She's also written several books. She is well known and mostly well known for her lovely Irish accent, which I'm sure you always get compliments on, or someone mentions to you. Is that kind of a common thing?
Constantly.
Where are you from?
So yeah, I get it all the time. And I used to get a lot of this. Can you say they're after me, Lucky Charms? That was the first 8 years of my life.
That seems kind of pejorative. They go to someone and be like, hey, dance for me, monkey.
Yeah, I just need you to say, they're after me, Lucky Charms. And I would say it dead flat like that. And they'd say, no, you need to put some emotion in it.
Give me something.
You gotta sing it. You gotta sing it. It's, oh man. One of my favorite actresses right now is Saoirse Ronan, and she's Irish, obviously. And one of my favorite things is when she explains whatever show she's on. people always ask her, how many people butcher your name? Because it's spelled really bizarrely, right? And she's like, oh, I hear all of it, and I just kind of just go along with it. And then she was trying to teach Stephen Colbert how to speak with a more Irish accent. And so she said it's very sing-songy. Like you have to you kind of go up in the motions and you go through it. It's just like, yeah, that's actually really like a good way of putting it. It's a very sing-songy kind of an accent.
But it's so funny because Saoirse Ronan's actually from the same county I'm from.
No way.
So yeah.
Do you guys know each other?
No,
Oh.
but we have
Well, then
friends
never
and
mind.
family who know each other. So
Wow,
yeah, 'cause
that's
it's
really cool.
It's a small county, it's
Sure.
Carlow, but she is beautiful, but her name gets butchered all the time.
Yeah,
so we
it's like
say
Saoirse or
Saoirse, Saoirse.
is that how you say it? Is Saoirse?
Saoirse.
Even
Yeah.
I was saying it wrong,
Yeah.
and I think she's great.
Now here's the thing. I mean, it's one thing if they, say this with an Irish accent, but when you hear other people speak in an Irish accent, like what do you think? Like you're like, oh, that's terrible. I mean, have you ever heard somebody speak with a good Irish
just
accent
nail
that was
it.
not Irish?
So it's so funny because Cardinal Dolan once in a while does a mean Irish accent.
I can see
and
that.
Cardinal O'Malley is another one because his mother
Okay.
is from Ireland.
Yeah.
And actually,
Cardinal O'Malley, really?
Cardinal
He's
O'Malley. I have a
always-
fun story about Cardinal O'Malley.
Okay.
So about 3 years ago, the US bishops convened the Convocation of Catholic Leaders to talk about discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the MC for that event. And there's, 200 bishops there, 5,000 people in a ballroom. And this is all pre-COVID.
Yeah,
You
no,
think
I
about
was
that,
just thinking that. I was like, wow, what was that like, huh?
And the security.
Scandalous.
It was crazy, the security was. Because, they're protecting all the bishops and the cardinals and priests and regular people who are there. And my family is with me because I am traveling with my children and my husband. And my baby at the time, so he was 3, is Sean Patrick. And every day my husband would walk me to the barrier to say goodbye, kind of best of luck.
The barrier?
There was a barrier.
No, I know. I just saw
It's very official.
just going into the arena.
Yeah, it really felt like that sometimes. And so walking to the barrier, it's all manned by Knights of Columbus guys, and they're wonderful, but they are strict.
Yeah.
So if you don't have your badge, you ain't going anywhere. But my son, who's 3, broke through the barrier and starts to run down the hallway, and
Did he get tackled?
I went into the Irish mom mode, like, Sean Patrick Anthony, get back here! And all of a sudden, I see a red hat turn round, and it was Cardinal O'Malley, and he says to me, I haven't heard anybody call me Sean Patrick since I was a little boy. And his name is Sean Patrick.
So he thought he was getting
So
scolded,
he
huh?
thought he was getting scolded. He said he brought him back to a place, and he's like, oh, what did I do? So that was my
Wow. So
fun moment.
you made a bishop feel docile to you.
A
cardinal.
Like, yeah, a cardinal. Yeah.
Stress
This is
out
what-
just a bit. Yeah. The Irish mammy will do that.
I think one of the only American English words I've heard you say that threw me off because I didn't know what you were saying was the word garage.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, you said a garage.
Correct.
And I was like, "What's a garage?" And I was like, I was just so thrown off by that. I was like, "Garage."
Garage.
I'm usually pretty good at that. Like I'm usually good at hearing like I think they mean this. When I worked at Ron Colley, we got a lot of international students. Obviously, English was their second language, and so then some of the words they'd mispronounce. I was usually pretty good at picking up. And I was like, "Garage." I'm like, I can't even think of what a garage in any way is. It's
The type of cheese or something. It's like,
We're in Wisconsin. We have cheese.
it must be a type of cheese. Yeah.
There's another word that I get teased a lot for when
can
I
I
say
can I
it at
guess? Can I guess?
home. Go ahead.
Appreciate.
That's another one.
Oh, it's
I've
It's
heard
not
that one.
It's aluminium.
Oh, aluminum. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've heard
yeah.
that. I've heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
say that, and I'll get, what is that? So
Can you say it one more time?
aluminium.
Aluminium.
Oh my
Aluminium
goodness.
Because
foil.
if you look at the way it's spelled, you can see how
No,
it's
for sure.
pronounced
Correct.
that way. Is it?
It's actually the correct pronunciation.
There's a host on TV who's English, and he was talking about he's a comedy host, and he's kind of making fun of Americans one time, and he was saying like, listen, Americans, if you all wouldn't have rebelled against us, the British, you could have this beautiful accent that I have right now. Instead, you all say dumb things like aluminum. And that's what he said. I was just like, yeah. I'm like, we lost out. I think we lost out on the good accent at least.
And that's one thing I would say about the Boston Tea Party is you overthrew tea, which in Ireland would be like a criminal offence because we drink more tea.
I'm with you.
We're in the top 3 tea drinking nations in the world.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just
shout
before
out to
this,
all the tea lovers.
for everyone listening, we were just discussing how Julianne does not drink anything that's bubbly,
Correct.
and Father Mark doesn't drink like coffee in the morning or like anything like that. He sometimes drinks a sparkling water that has a little bit of caffeine in it to kind of give a little bit of a boost if he's feeling tired. But like I remember that, I think we probably talked about this before, but I remember when I first met you and you came walking, you were just ordained a priest, you came walking up the sidewalk at Roncalli to meet with me, and I offered you, I'm like, hey, can I get you a cup of coffee? It was like 8:30 in the morning, and he was like, no, I don't drink coffee. And I immediately thought, I don't trust this guy. Like, I was just like, who in their right mind doesn't drink some kind of caffeine? You're like, I just don't drink it.
But
I'm like,
he drinks tea.
He does,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think I've ever seen you drink tea. But you claim you do.
No, I do. I mean, it's not all the time, but I mean, it's in one of those Yetis.
Oh,
you
sure.
know, so you can't tell. And I
That's
usually
true.
have it brewed already, so it's not like I have the tea bag hanging off the side. So
He likes a good cup of chai.
Oh, yeah?
Yes,
I do.
He does.
I'm not a big fan of chai.
Oh, I need
it's
to make
good.
some homemade.
I'm not,
Yes.
see,
Shame on you.
I worked over at Starbucks in college for about a year, and I just wasn't a big fan of chai.
Don't go to Starbucks.
well, see
for
that's
tea.
not real though. I mean, that's like the
It's
concentrate stuff. It's like ugh,
Bad.
nasty.
I definitely
Nasty.
cannot speak to what their chai is made of. I just know that I had to scoop it out a lot, and then I
Oh,
it
there's your
wasn't
key. If you have to scoop
Yeah,
anything,
it's-
it's not real tea.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. I'm sure they have like the actual tea bags of chai, but that's not what people wanted. They wanted like their
No, they want
their chai latte or something.
yeah.
I don't remember what it was.
Code name for sugar.
Yeah, basically. So Julianne, we're having you on today because you do a lot of really interesting work and kind of a huge plethora of things. And so you had mentioned that you are doing some work with Bishop Barron and talking about young adults and reaching out to young adults. So just, I mean, I kind of want to give you the floor. I mean, like what drew you to that? Why are you working for young adults or trying to help young adults get more involved in the church? And what's kind of the game plan for that?
That's a really interesting question. You know, I was a young adult minister for many years in the diocese in parishes, and I remember, you know, putting the first theology on taps together and trying to reach out to young adults, and building community with young adults is really, really important. I think it's where they figure out what their faith means, how they discern a vocation a lot of times, and even kind of look at choices in their life and how they kind of cycle through being a good person. They kind of will bounce ideas off others. So I came from a background of having a pretty heavy concentration in working with young adults. About 9 years ago, actually, I was offered the chance to be a part of the USCCB Committee on Evangelization and Catechesis. And that was an incredible experience for me to be sitting at a table with bishops from around the country, bishops from around the world, having conversations at the Vatican. And what was interesting is the last couple of years, there's been a shift with the committee very much to evangelization. And so Bishop Barron was elected president of our committee about 3 years ago. And so his whole focus was on reaching out to young adults. And so with Word on Fire and partnering with Spiritu Studios, the USCCB produced a documentary on the issues of disaffiliation. And I want to just share with those that are listening in why that was so important. We were hearing a lot of anecdotal evidence from parishes and from just regular people about why they were leaving the church. Mm. But it was interesting. There was a disconnect from what people were hearing and also how parishes were responding. And so Bishop Barron wanted to kind of focus the project on what young adults were actually telling us as a church.
Yeah.
Because he felt like that was getting missed, which was so interesting. And so a documentary premiered maybe a year or two ago in front of the general body of bishops, outlining a number of pathways to reach young adults. And I was interviewed for that documentary. And since then, we're working on a kind of a resource guide for diocesan offices, vocations groups, chaplains, campus ministers, that they can kind of really dive into some of the research from young adults and some of the solutions for going forward.
So when you were working in young adult ministry, what did you find to be, I mean, I don't like the words effective or ineffective. I think those can kind of get lost in some more business-esque kind of terms, and that's not that's not what we're talking about here. But what did you find to be fruitful when working with young adults when you were doing it, and now may not be the same anymore? Like, how has things changed even in a few years?
Yeah, I mean, things have changed from when I was in a parish to today. I think today's young adults are more hypermobile than they were before. Mm-hmm. They're more transitory, commitment phobia. I mean, those are all fairly well documented in terms of research. There's been a massive shift, I think, in parish life from large group events, which were huge at the time for young adults, to more small, intimate gatherings. And so I definitely think that's the way to go, to build up that relationship. And I think beyond the small group, the one-on-one relationship piece is key. And I think young adults want to sit with someone. They've a great hunger for meaning and belonging. They just want someone to just listen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our programs in our parishes can put an emphasis on events, an event-driven ministry, which can feel busy and rushed. And young adults kind of move at a different pace.
Yeah.
So
I think to have those events obviously is a good starting point, but it sounds like, it can't just end there.
No.
The follow up and just, okay, get them together, but then afterwards, how do you build that relationship, that one-on-one? Because it is so important, and it's a beautiful thing. But that's, you look at it, it's like there's a lot of work there to be done. So it's like the more we can get involved, like, more people, it's to have those small groups. It's a huge thing. But that one-on-one, I just think that's when a lot of that really those breakthroughs happen. It seems like it seems like.
I think one conversation can change your life. I was talking with a friend of mine out in California, and he's Bishop David O'Connell, actually. He's an Irishman, born, bred in Ireland, but here he is ministering out in...
so he says garage, too,
He says garage, and he says aluminium.
Aluminium. I can't even say it. No, aluminium.
Anyway, please go ahead.
He's a wonderful person, and he's a real heart for young people. And we were talking about this. I said, what's your vocation story? How did you become a priest? And I don't like that word become. But he said to me, 17 seconds changed his life. He was sitting at home in County Cork in Ireland, and one of the priests of the diocese had a friend who was ministering out in the Archdiocese of LA, and said, "Hey boy," literally said that to him, "Hey boy," and actually in County Cork, that's how they refer to you, "Hey boy."
Sure, yeah.
And what are you doing this summer? And he's like, "Well, I'm going to work on my family's farm." He's like, "Have you ever thought about being a priest?" And Bishop O'Connell had thought about being a priest, and said, "Don't suppose you'd want to come to LA and kind of do some work over here for the church in LA?" And fast forward that, and here he is, bishop in California.
Wow.
Man.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, Father Mark now, so you're a young priest, right?
Thank you.
You did say your name, you did say your age on the podcast, like the first one, you said you're 33. It's your Jesus year.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
So you being a young priest, clearly the efforts of young adult ministry has been going on for at least 10 years, and at least pretty strongly in that sense. So back when you were either in seminary or just before seminary, what did you find helpful when it came to like discerning your vocation, but being a young adult and like the efforts of young adult ministry at that time?
Yeah, to me the biggest thing was the community, in the sense that I'm not the only one that wants to grow my faith, that wants to know who Jesus is. That I'm not, sometimes you feel like you're out on an island if you're really trying to like grow in your faith, and it's just like, you look around at church sometimes, I hate to say, but it's just like, you're the youngest person there. To know that there were other people there, that there was a community, even if I wasn't quite seeing it, to get together, to know that's there, that was huge for me. I just think in general, right, if you have somebody else, a partner in crime, whatever it is, like, it's just easier to do. So for me, that was the biggest thing to recognize. And the huge thing for me actually was my time at UW-Madison. So you think, okay, UW-Madison, it's, known for this and that, kind of a liberal place and not a lot of God sometimes. But like the St. Paul University Center there was just huge. Like in regards to like college students, like young adults, I would argue, maybe not super, adult, but young. The community that was there was just huge, to recognize like all these people were coming to Mass, and like they were trying to know who the Lord was. That was just huge. It was huge.
So then, Julianne, some of the findings, I'm kind of curious of, like, when you were working on this committee, and I'm assuming you still are,
yeah.
Here's kind of how I'm going to preface this. The young adult community is kind of like a very enigmatic one, especially when I'm being a young adult myself and being on pastoral council at my parish. I get asked that question a lot. How do we get more young adults involved? Because, apparently I speak for all young adults, being a young adult myself. But I always tell them, I said, what's hard is like that age group is so odd.
Vast.
Because if you're doing it from 18, it's often 18 to 30 or
39
39
yeah.
is what it is,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so like what I often tell them is like, so I'm married and have a kid. And like if I go to a young adult event and it's all a bunch of 20-year-olds who are all single and looking for a spouse and they're all hanging out at a bar or whatever it is, like that doesn't interest me in the least. Like no offense to the college kids,
I've done that.
I don't necessarily want to go spend my time with a bunch of 18-year-olds in my free time, like me and my wife kind of thing, right? And I think some of those events can be fun, like where you get to know more people, then you kind of build those relationships, and as they get married, you're involved in their life. So it's a beautiful thing in that sense. But it also can be a little bit of a turning off point for me where I'm just like, well, I don't want to go to a bar for a Catholic singles night, you know what I mean? Because like that's literally not me, you know, and so it's hard. So I mean, what were some?
Good that it's not you too, considering you're married, Taylor.
So what were some of the findings you guys had? What were some of the ways you approached this? Like, how did you personally find this information? Was it surprising? Was it striking? That I mean, take it as you will.
You know, I guess some of the research wasn't surprising. I mean, the report that came out from St. Mary Press in 2017, there was one statistic that really shocked many people, including myself, which was most disaffiliation happens between the ages of 10 and 20, with the average young person decided to opt out by the age of 13.
Yeah.
So we're holding off a lot of conversations about vocation, about science, about the great artistic patrimony of the church, things like that could make a difference in the life of a young person. We're holding them off to high school when they've already made a decision to leave. So I think that was a shocker for a lot of people. I wasn't as surprised by some of the other kinds of research around science was an issue for young people, and there would seem to be a conflict between science and faith for,
the things like you hear,
things you hear. Because I have a lot of young adults that come over to my home. I find that if you open up your home, you have tea, we have scones, we have good pastries. They'll come over and they'll chat about what's going on in their heart. It's a small venue. It's it's a trusted kind of a friend situation, but they will pour out their heart to you. What the USCCB found was that there were a number of pathways that we weren't really maximizing as a church to really engage young people. And one of those pathways was, as you would expect, justice. Young people want to make a difference. They have a heart for the underdog. Fairness is a big thing in equality. But how is a church, considering that we have one of the largest charitable organizations in the world, do more to help the poor and serve marginalized people than any other entity? How do we leverage that, in a sense, to see that as a pathway to working with young adults? So you'd expect that. Another one that came up that was really interesting, and you certainly, both of you, won't be surprised by this because you both love beauty and good aesthetics and liturgy, is beauty was a huge pathway for young adults. And so they're interested in how things look. Sacred space really appeals to them. And our churches don't always leverage, and I mean that in the best possible way, the beauty of our churches, our art, the iconography that's at the heart of our tradition. We sometimes don't use those as a means to evangelize. Yeah. So those were two pieces of research that I found really interesting.
Yeah, hearing you talk about all this too is, what's interesting to me is it seems like the issues that that are facing young adults and young adult ministry, when you look at the things that young adults desire or they don't desire, whatever it is, it seems like the church already has a pretty good wealth of things to offer. I mean, like if they desire justice, I mean, like they could dive in the church social teaching, and so our church can capitalize on that. When they desire beauty, I mean, no disrespect to any other religions, but we have some of those beautiful places in the world, you know what I mean? Like, and so it seems like we have the ability to do this. Like we have the arsenal at our disposal to make this happen, but a lot of times it's just not. And it's kind of it comes down to, well, who's going to volunteer to do this, or our parish doesn't have the budget to do this kind of thing, and I think a lot of times it gets overthought, it's very overthought of how much this is going to cost or how much effort's going to have to actually go into this, when I think sometimes it just takes, let's just try it. Let's just put it on and see what happens.
Yeah, I also think our approach sometimes is overly educational. And I mean, I have a background in teaching. It's my first love. That's something Father Mark and I connected on. Social studies, history, that's just a whole passion of mine. I was a history teacher back in Ireland. But I think what we do is we teach a lot about the teachings of the church, but we don't give people an experience of what it means to be a part of the church. Yeah. And so not just talking about the church's social teachings, or not just talking about the art and science, but giving people an experience of what it means to belong. I think that's where we have a ways to grow as a church. Yeah.
And another thing maybe just to throw out there, because we've done an episode on this, the importance of silence and how that can obviously build that relationship with Jesus, that can foster that connection, to hear his voice. I guess maybe that's just a question as well. What's the place of silence in regards to young adult ministry and young adults themselves? I mean, in my mind, it's like, they're running around, just busy. A lot of energy, just doing a lot of things and whatnot, but like to have that silence. So, I mean, has that come up at all in the research, like the importance of silence and fostering that in their lives?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been reflecting on that personally, especially during the pandemic and all the unrest that's happening right now. I find that social media has become, everybody's talking all the time. And for me, And especially with working with young adults, they'll say, I'm bombarded by news, I'm bombarded by emails, I've alerts going off on my phone all the time. I think there's a difference between silence and stillness. And so my own reflection recently, which may be helpful to those that are listening in, is you can be quiet, but not still and not silent. And I think, so being in a room by yourself doesn't mean that you're going to have that value of silence. I think when we invite young people into that space in our churches, it naturally disposes you to stillness. There's a rhythm that's there. And for me, I think about that scripture, be still and know that I am God. I think that first step to knowing who God is and how he's working in our lives is often stillness, which is literally stopping ourselves from moving, from thinking, from overthinking, and really being still and silent. And that did come up in the research, actually, because beauty, the exposure to beauty can be a very internal dialogue. Like something, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a nerd. So one of the things I love is to go to art museums and look at sacred art. And nobody's talking in an art museum, or they're whispering very quiet, but I can go from painting to painting, thinking and looking and imagining, and something just settles down in me. And so our churches have beautiful works of art. Even if they don't have expensive works of art, they often have beautiful classic art. And so stillness and silence did come up in the research for the USCCB too.
Yeah, even when you were just saying that, before you said going to an art museum, I was thinking, like, this does seem like something that young adults, just people in general, are predisposed to. Like, if I have been to art museums, and it's true, like, it's usually pretty quiet, and you don't feel uncomfortable in that silence. Unless you're like a little kid who doesn't know how to keep silence, and you want to run around, your parents trying to keep you quiet the whole time.
Which happens with mine.
Yeah, it's like if you go in there and you just know this is a still place, and you're kind of just very peaceful about it. But I've also experienced that in some of the most beautiful churches. I think about the one that always comes to my mind is St. Joseph at Basilica in Milwaukee.
It's gorgeous.
I took my wife and my sister there when a couple years ago before we went to a funeral, just because they'd never been there before. And we walked in. It just strikes you. Like, there's no way to explain to people how beautiful it is. But when you say to them, I want you to go in, I want you to stay close to the back, and then I want you to walk your way forward up the aisle and just watch the whole place unfold before you. And you go in there, and a thing I always say is, it seems like the beautiful churches makes you feel compelled to pray. Like you feel compelled to be still and to just be there. I don't want to be here to observe an art museum. I want to be here because this beauty speaks to me to be quiet.
And there's a presence there that you can feel.
Yeah. No, something very beautiful about that.
Yeah, because you step in, and it's, in my mind, the church is meant to be, otherworldly. This is a piece of heaven, if you will. So when you step in, you recognize that, this doesn't look like anything else, which takes you to that above, that's the heavenly realm, So.
Yeah. And we have so many beautiful churches in our diocese. Like,
we do.
Stangleville is one that we talk about a lot. Father Mark is passionate about.
That's a Bohemian parish, let the record show. My grandparents got married there as well.
Big
My grandma was from
family, huh?
Well, big, yeah. It's actually, so it's well, never mind. I'm not going to go into it. So
that would be a different episode.
The locals say Stanglesville with an S.
Do they?
There's no S there, but it's what it is.
And I think about St. Mary's in Algoma, where I was married,
yes.
and it's so gorgeous there. And I think that's the difference between like going to a museum and observing art than being in a church. You can sense presence. The presence, the smell, I think, is something, it just takes you out of the ordinary into a different realm.
Well, even the placement of it too, and not to go too much on that, but it sits on top of this hill. Like, you look over the city, like you look over the water and stuff. It's very commanding. I think, obviously I don't think that was happened since they chose to build that like on this high point in the city, and even that speaks to it. Just like, yep. We're ascending to the heavenly realm. Like, you have to drive up, And
I think young adults can feel this even if they can't articulate it. Like, I think about that.
Yeah.
I used to always wonder what like wandering on God's presence really felt like. But I think, sometimes, when you're in front of the Blessed Sacrament and you start to kind of well up and you don't know why, or you're in the presence of someone who says something like that really touches you, or just can put their finger on maybe something you're struggling with. I think people can feel that deep down in the depth of their soul, and that's where the encounter, that stirring happens in those moments. And I think for young adult ministry, because going back to your point, Taylor, it is so vast. Yeah. 18 to 39 is giant. I think one of the pieces that we're learning as a church is you can't be all things to everybody. So forming these intimate groups around small, niched interests, people who like art, people who are interested in science, young adults who are single, young adults who have families. They're all at different places. And I think our ministry efforts need to really reflect what people need rather than what we think they need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something beautiful about that too, like beautiful about the challenge of it, like there is a sense that the youth ministry program needs to have all of these things in place to be the perfect youth ministry program. But what it comes down to a lot is that youth minister going to be committed to just walking with those students and like taking the time to get to know them? And I think the same thing is then true for a young adult ministry. I mean, like, are you going to take the time to just get to know these young adults? And I know for me, I can speak now having a little one too. The thing that I know young adults always speak about feeling welcome. We want to feel welcome in church and that kind of stuff. And the thing that honestly is for me that is hilarious is the whole chicken and the egg kind of thing happens. Is that we get asked, well, what would make you guys feel more welcome in church? And I always say, if there were more young families and babies, because if there's more babies around and my baby starts crying, well, then no one knows whose baby it is, and then you don't feel embarrassed. But when we're in mass,
priest does.
but when we're in mass and our little one's the only one making noise, everyone knows it's her, and like you feel embarrassed and compelled and like, but like,
shouldn't.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. But if there's lots of other families around, you don't feel that same kind of like thing. You're like, well, everyone's kids are making noise. This is part of the gig, It's like,
and some children make more noise than others. Let me tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. There's an expression: if your church isn't crying, it's dying.
Yeah.
I think the capacity for young people to feel that depth of encounter, especially for the stirring of vocation, is critical. Can I tell a little tiny story here?
Please.
So
that's why you're here, Julianne.
Yes, you can tell a story. The mic is yours.
This is great. I wish I had an extra large cup of tea, but 2 years ago I went through a health scare. I can be honest about it, and it was pretty significant for me. And I remember in the days where they were looking at the diagnosis and getting more information, I kind of went into this place in my head, which wasn't good because I started Googling all my symptoms. Never do that.
Oh yeah, that's
my doctor hates when I do that. He's like, stop doing that, Taylor.
And through that process, I stopped myself looking at the symptoms. I was really, really struggling. And I kept going back to, Julianne, come on. Like, I wasn't finding peace. And so I was just bothered all day, kind of agitated. And I was going to church, I was praying, I was going to mass. But the longer it went, the more agitated I was getting because I wasn't getting a resolution. And I think it's very difficult, especially when you're discerning a vocation, to want to have it all sewn up.
Yeah.
And so the waiting and the revealing that God is doing, we have to learn to be better with that because society rushes everything. But I had an insight from my son, and it was such a beautiful one. I just cried. But I was tucking him into bed one night, and at the time, so he was 4 at the time, he sat right up and he said, "Mom, you've been really sad for the last few days." And he said, "I saw you crying in the kitchen," which was really hard because I thought I was hiding it really well. Mm-hmm. And I said, Mom has got something going on at the moment, and we just have to pray as a family that everything's going to be okay. And I tucked him into bed that night, and the next night I was tucking him in, and before I left the room, he sat up straight in bed and he goes, Mom, is it true?" And I was like, "Is what true?" He goes, "The man at church." And I was like, "Okay, which man at church?" He goes, "Okay,
gotta narrow it down there, buddy."
Yeah, he goes, the father." And I was like, "Okay, which father?" You have to understand, because I work at the diocese, we meet a lot of fathers. I'm on the phone to my father in Ireland a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously we have our pastor father as well. And I said, "Do you mean Father Amadi in Algoma?" And he said, yeah. And I said, "Okay." He said, So we've determined that this is mass that this is happening at. And he said, is what Father says true? And I said, "What?" And he took his little tiny chubby baby hands at the age of 4, and he held up like he was holding the host. And he said, "If you eat this bread, you will live forever." He said, "Mom, is that true?" Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, here was my 4-year-old reminding me that no matter what was going to happen with that diagnosis, no matter if it was going to be, lead to my own mortality and death, we were going to live forever because we had the gift of the Eucharist. And I thought, my 4-year-old, just by being in church, was exposed to that, was mimicking the actions of the priest, and was internalizing a resurrection moment. And I thought, children have such huge capacity, and we often underestimate that.
Oh, absolutely. And there's something incredible about as a parent, for you in that moment, I mean, when your child says to you, "Is this true?" I feel like kids probably ask their parents that a decent amount for decent amount of things. You know, my little one's only about a year old right now, so like that hasn't happened yet. But like I'm sure it's gonna happen. Is this true? And I think about parents and with their raising of their kids and raising them in the faith, and also then obviously raising them to be open to vocation. I mean, like when your child says to you, "Is what Father's doing up there, is that true?" And you say, "Of course, yes, absolutely it is." I mean, that's going to have a resolute effect for a long time. That's gonna dig some deep wells in them of saying like this is true and like go with it, you know. And that's beautiful. That's really cool. And you mentioned even too with the idea of being certain, like we want the answers now and that kind of stuff. I do see that. It's come up a couple of times in conversation with Father Mark and also with Father Schuster, like the role of certainty when it comes to vocational discernment. And that's something that I know I struggled with back when I was starting my vocation of like I want there to be like the loud thunderclap moment of like this is certain, Taylor, you are called to this kind of thing, you know. And the frustrating part that I kept being told over and over is you're not going to get that, and it's just not going to happen. And at some point you have to make a decision to continue to make the next step in whatever discernment direction you want to go, whether that be going to seminary because you've been discerning for 5 years and actively and never taking the next step. You have to go to seminary then. Or maybe it's like you've been dating your girlfriend that you're both in your 20s, you've been dating your girlfriend for 4 or 5 years. Either you gotta get engaged and say this is what we're doing, this is what God's calling me to, or you gotta find something else, you know. Like it's like the sense of certainty that just people want desperately, but they're not going to get. And like it's just that's a very frustrating reality to encounter, but I think one that's necessary to be wrestled with. And I think if young adult ministries can help young people to wrestle with that reality, you're not going to feel certain. And like you might have moments of clarity, you might feel really compelled or passionate about this, which is a beautiful thing, but you may not get that moment of absolute certainty, and that's okay. And like you got to expose them to the whole patrimony of the church, help them understand why that's okay.
And in my own mind, I guess that's why I think the importance of silence is there, because you know, we want the answer, but if God just like gave the answer, like boom, it's like, okay, here are your marching orders. It's like God's not a general just telling you what to do. Like,
but you want him to be.
You want him to be, but that's not who he is.
No,
he's a father.
Yeah. He's a gentleman.
Yeah,
that's what I always say. He's never going to impose upon your own will.
Nope.
There's a couple of things I think too. I talk about all the C's when I talk about vocations, which is that you want to have certainty, but God doesn't often. I mean, you'll get confirmation in taking that next step, and clarity will come with that, and you just keep moving closer and closer to the will of the Father, and clarity will come, commitment will come. And I think we always want closure or completion, and we just can't get them in terms of our earthly vocation. It's here, but we're not made just for this life. We're made for eternity. And so I think, you know, the C's, the clarity, the commitment, all of those things kind of lead into that. And I think intentionally slowing down your mind in prayer, because I have a lot of young people who say to me, especially young adults, I don't know how to pray. Yeah. And I'll say, do you know how to listen? And they'll say, I don't know if I even really know how to listen.
I don't know. Yeah, sure.
Because I'm always listening to respond.
Oh, sure.
And we have to get out of that mentality when it comes to our faith. So intentionally slowing down and saying, you know, God, what do you want for this time? What do you want from me right now? And just listening, that I think opens people up in a different way to what God is saying.
Yep. It certainly does.
I think that's a great insight. Yeah, we're just ready to like, boom. This is the response. It's just like, no, just listen to receive.
Yeah.
To receive.
Yeah. There's something about that. Like, we're human beings. We're not human doings. I mean, it's a cliche, but you know, rest in me and be still. So just being still, being silent leads to the knowing that God is who God is for us.
Well, amen to that. Well, I have a last final question for you. So if it's a short story, please go for it. I can tell by
your face that this is going to be an interesting one.
It will. So I saw you posted on Facebook the other day a picture of your son with his bag rolling down the sidewalk, and he was going over to the neighbor's house. I want to know more about what happened. So like, I just want the context. I thought that was absolutely hilarious what you posted on there.
So there comes a time in every child's life when I think
was he running away?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
So my son Sean, who I just mentioned earlier, with this profound insight, is also just a goofball. But I wanted him to pick up his clothes that were on the floor, and then gum is the thing in our house. Like, it's a treat. So like, gum wrappers are everywhere. You need to pick up your gum wrappers.
You tyrant.
and that's what I said. There comes a stage in every parent's life when they must flee the tyranny of parents who force them to do things. So he was super well organized.
Yeah.
He registered his protest. You are the worst parents ever. Worst mom ever. I am leaving. Now, it's kind of funny, but we have a neighbor that we call Grandma Linda. She's not actually our grandma,
Sure.
but she acts in persona grandma for our family. And he came down the stairs with his Thomas the Tank suitcase. A toothbrush was in it. And
you
all
know
his
he
toys.
meant business.
Yeah.
Toothbrush, Thomas the Tank Engine,
And
no
his
looking back.
sleeping bag.
And his what?
His sleeping bag. And
His Ninja Turtle one? What kind of sleeping bag
it
does
was
he
just
have?
a regular one,
Oh, okay,
you know,
okay,
right?
okay.
But he came down with that, and then there was this realization. I'm leaving home, and we were like, "Oh, really, Sean? You know, why? I can't do it anymore here. Okay, you're 6. This is like
I can't do this anymore.
That's what he said.
I can't handle this.
So we said, "What's your game plan?" And he's like, "I am going to go to Grandma Linda's." Now, Linda lives a block down, but across the street.
Yeah.
He cannot cross the street by himself at 6. That's one of the rules in our house. So there was this awkward moment of him running away, but being chaperoned by his dad across the street to our neighbor's house, and where she spoiled him. He got pizza. He got to play the Wii. And she called and said, he's ready to come back now. This is like after 2 hours. So Wayne had to go get him, cross the street, and he came back. And, he said something which I thought was interesting. I said, so how was that for you? Well, he loved being spoiled by Grandma Linda, but I just needed a little space, Mom. And I thought, everybody needs a little space.
Yeah.
But he just needed a little space away from our house. But yeah, that was one of those moments. And then, of course, I posted on Facebook, and there were all these stories of like Father Tom Pomeroy jumped in and said, "Oh, I remember doing that," and shared a story. And it was kind of one of those universal things of parenting.
I needed more context, and I thought that was absolutely hilarious when he posted that. So thank you for sharing that.
So for the record, are you still the worst mom ever, or has that title been lifted?
Well, yesterday I made Irish shortbread, which is a huge thing in our house, and all my kids drink tea. So yesterday my kids declared me to be the very best
Well done.
mom
I'm
ever.
glad. I'm happy to hear
Well
that.
done.
Yeah, I'm happy you're reading today. That's great. Well, Father Mark, would you mind closing us in a brief prayer, and then we'll wrap up here?
Not at all. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Dear Lord, as we enter into this time of ordinary time, a time of order, a time of growing in relationship with you, we ask for an outpouring of your blessing, that we may be still, that we may be silent within our hearts, that we hear your voice, that we hear your will as a great Father to us, and that we respond with the great love that you place there to do that will, with the grace that you provide. We ask your blessing upon all those gathered here, all those listening, that they may know you and all that you ask for them in their lives. We ask that you bless them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, Julianne, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to all the listeners. Please make sure you guys leave a review, and that helps kind of bump it up in the ratings. When people are searching for it, share it with your friends and family, and may you always be keeping the